Today we are driving the all-new VW Tayron. That is the bigger brother of the VW Tiguan and also a brother of the Skoda Kodiaq, because the Kodiaq and the Tayron both available as 5 or 7-seater. Before they used to call it Tiguan Allspace in Europe, for example. Now it gets an own model name. And how good is it? How does it drive? By the way, also very interesting, this one here is built in Wolfsburg, Germany. It's also interesting to know, especially nowadays. And this one will even be sent to Australia from Germany. So our Australian fans here will also get this Tayron here, whereas the US model will be called Tiguan, but will be somewhat similar to the Tayron, just not as a 7-seater. That's like a very, very quick country overview. And now everything you need to know with Thomas Nagelfuel in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the new front, which has the illuminated VW logo here, is integrated in this daytime running light and leads over to the IQ light. These are the matrix LED. There's one option on this vehicle. Dolphin gray is this color here. That's why I picked also my dolphin gray shirt here for you today. And yes, there are some options here on this vehicle. However, it is still the base trim and also the base engine, because this is the least spec'd vehicle I can find here from the pool for you, because when we have the possibility, we also like to show you, hey, what it's like when it's 20,000 euros less expensive than the top trim model and so on. But we also go through what is an option and what not. Wheels from 17 to 20 inch. You see some with 20-inch wheels. These are 19-inch, so not the biggest ones, but also bigger already. Then you also have here the crossover cladding. The R-Line, for example, would have it in the high gloss black, if you would prefer that. Then you see the Tayron is longer than the Tiguan. So overall the length is here 4.77 meters or 188 inches. That means it's 22 centimeters longer than the Tiguan and 11 centimeters longer in wheelbase. So in inches, 9 inches longer overall and 4 inches longer in wheelbase. Interesting on the technology side is the DCC Pro. It's also spec'd with this vehicle, new dynamic chassis control, adaptive suspension, now with the 2-valve system. And for the Tayron here, for the first time, they added a special piece which even supposed to increase the comfort, to reduce the vibrations while driving. And the Tayron is the first one to get this additional new piece. So that was a very latest development, and soon also the Passat and the Tiguan will also profit from that, but not yet. The Tayron is in this case then the first one receiving it. To the rear, we see the light strip goes all the way through. There's a signature here for the rear lights, looks really modern. And also you can see here the illuminated VW logo in the rear. You can see it in red, and I think it looks especially cool at night. So what do you think about design? Tell me in the comments. And of course we gotta check out the engines, because there are, a few choices. 2.5 tons, by the way, is the maximum towing capacity. That one is achieved with the all-wheel drive models. Beep, 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 because I have the ignition running. And then we go to the engine compartment here. Very strong hood here overall, actually from design. So this one here is the 1.0. It's like very good gas struts here. 1.5 TSI, turbo petrol engine. We also have a nice dampening here. 150 horsepower, front-wheel drive, 9.4 seconds in the acceleration figure. And this gains, more and more fans, because it's low in the entry price, yet at the same time, quite good fuel economy. I can also drive the car once again today, of course, and then later on give an insight about today's fuel economy. And then you have the other standard choices, for example, the 2-liter TSI, the 4-cylinder, more power. This one also with all-wheel drive, up to 265 horsepower. Then you can get the 2-liter TDI, the diesel. There you can also get all-wheel drive for. And then there is the plug-in hybrid based on this one, 20 kilowatt hours net battery. However, this one, again, only front-wheel drive. Let's see if they add something to that later, because especially our friends from Switzerland and Austria and also in Bavaria in Germany, they demand a plug-in hybrid with all-wheel drive, but that's not there yet. So some customers were lost there, and now they try to improve something there as well. If you want to read all the facts and figures about the engines, we always have it in a separate comment and also in the video description. There we have all horsepower figures and all the acceleration figure also prepared for you. And while we are looking at these cascading turning indicators, which you get also with the highest LED trim, I can tell you that there is indeed a 2-step system, or over like in 3 trims, because you have the base LED, then you have LED plus, and then on top of that, here these IQ Light Matrix LED, which are then HD Matrix LED. Yeah, on the one hand, it's complicated for the customer that you have like this, you know, 3-level logic basically. Then again, what is good that these here are actually taken from the VW Touareg, so it's using the same H3 matrix system. And we also have these cascading turning indicators here, pretty fancy for the rear. Now towards the interior here, high gloss key fob, not my favorite one. Let's check out the door closing sounds. Solid. Solid as well, like that. Then inside of the doors, we can check it out here. Have a structure on the top part. You can also, you know, feel it that it's a little bit softer. Then here a leatherette with contrast stitching, and also inside of the doors here the felt at the inside of the door pockets. That's really cool actually. And then, as I said, the Life trim. Real buttons at the steering wheel, they returned here with the Tayron. It's also pretty cool. That is also a customer feedback that VW has taken into account. And these are the seats in the Life trim, fabric seats. And I mean, they look fancy. Fabric on the inside, leatherette on the outside. Alternatively, in the R-Line or the Elegance, you can also get some microfiber seats, and they are then a little bit fancier as well. And they are also comfortable, both comfortable from the ergonomics. I would say maybe like in summer times, maybe the microfiber seats are a little bit softer and less scratchy, maybe like this, but they both do quite well. And yeah, good seating position also for tall people. This one here without the panoramic roof, and then you have here 1.89 m, 6'2", little headroom left. Yeah, or you get the panoramic roof, which you can actually open as well. Here I like also the bright ceiling, so we rarely see that nowadays. A lot of the vehicles are, let's say, like these black holes, and yeah, this is actually pretty cool, gives more light. And you can already see the switch gears here on the right side, forward and backward, here on this side, so easy solution then for the gear selection, and left side then for the wipers. And this here, in this case, a manual seat, which is not bad, I feel. Just here, like when you control the back part, and you of course now have like a memory function or something like that, lumbar support. This is electric here, however. But that is something when you go for a higher trim level that you could also get, for example, electric seats. Welcome to this cockpit. Here the base trim has this structure here, and you can actually feel that. That's actually interesting. And Leah earlier suggested, maybe VW doesn't want to hear it that way, but she suggested that could be a cheese grater. Yeah, I mean, maybe. What do you think about that?
The structure feels like that.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it almost feels like it, but it doesn't grate your fingers, though. Good to know that. Infotainment, it would start with 13-inch. This is here the optional bigger 15-inch, really large for a car of that size, definitely, and more comes to like the size of like the Chinese vehicles and so on. And also the software has been improved meanwhile at VW, so it's quicker, more reliable, and so on. Doesn't mean it's the best software. That's why they partner up with Rivian for the US and European market, and with XPeng for the Chinese market, to be even better than in the software scheme. You have these sliders here in the lower part to control temperature. It's better to have that than only to do it in the screen, although I would prefer physical dials. But as you have seen with the ID1 or ID Up presentation, VW is going back for real physical dials also for the climate unit. Then the glove box here, properly dampened, really soft, good build quality. Then also here, for example, already in the base trim, you have here this leatherette covering with contour stitching. Some space here on top of that. Underneath, you have 2 inductive charging pads, or the phone family. Guess who has the bigger phone? Of course, the girls, like always. And they're actually both ventilated also. You see the cooling holes, they like face downward, therefore you can't see it. 2 USB-C chargers are also there. And then you have this central drive selector, either for volume or you press it once and then you can select the driving modes. Also going to talk about it while driving then very soon. And then you have this open middle console, first of all here for your armrest. You can fold it open and also forward, it's possible. Underneath for coins and for a card holder. And then you can either have the bottles here underneath, that's possible. However, you can also switch that around. So let's see, I can even lift that together with the bottle. Yeah, maybe like that. Interesting. So put it like here, then they're more accessible. And then you have this rather larger opening right there. So this is all possible to do it like that. And yeah, I think the cockpit overall works. In the Kodiaq, I do prefer the physical dials for the climate and so on, which are then here. However, we're also going to take a look at how the driving differences are later on. We drive Autobahn and also the countryside road. Driver POV, once again here with the nice real buttons. Left side, for example, for the cruise control. Then digital instruments. You can also change the views here. You can also have a RPM view like this, for example. You can also get something of the map. That's also possible like that. And you can also get a head-up display optional. And the main infotainment system here, really large integration, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, wired or wireless. Seat heating would be activated down there, for example. And as I said here with the sliders, we can also go in here and then slide or press. So different solutions. Important that here you can easily access the assistance systems. And then you can, for example, deactivate this speed beeping or the lane keeping assist. And then here, this is like the main menu. And see here, it could be quicker, more responsive, but I think meanwhile it does the job. And many of you, including me, have been waiting for Leah's part in this one. Yes, Leah is saying, yeah, love you all, especially for all the comments concerning Leah. Always, yes, so lovely, nice comments always when Leah is on stage, definitely. And I also think she should be on stage more often, definitely. What about the handles? We have
handles? Yeah.
4. Yeah, everyone can hold on tight.
When Thomas is driving.
When I'm driving faster again, definitely. And
here for the sunglasses.
Sunglasses,
Yeah.
also storage. And what about the visors? Sunblind.
Passt.
Light. Can we extend it?
No.
No, that's not possible. Now the rear seating, that will be very exciting. First of all, here the rear door, we have this shade, goes actually really like the whole space there. It's actually cool, this cover. And then also the more speakers, Harman Kardon sound system, and also felt covering at the inside of the rear doors. And then here for the seats, so we can either use this one here to change the angle a little bit like that. I can pull it here on the top part, then I can also slide it forward at the same time for access to the third seating row, which is optionally available. And then you can also slide it forward here with holding that underneath. And the thing is, this is here the 7-seater. If you have the 5-seater, this is different because then the bench goes more backward. So the rail is longer in the 5-seater. That means you have more legroom in the second seating row with the 5-seater and a little bit more boot capacity. Then again, with the 7-seater, you have more flexibility as for the seats. So it's a question, what is more important to you? Here, this middle part, you can also fold down, and then in this very front part, like this, for some cup holders, and here maybe like for a phone or something like that. Put it back like this. Middle part and lower here, USB-C chargers, and also seat heating and the climate unit when the engine is running. Here, relatively big middle hump for the all-wheel drive systems. And then you can see when I'm driving here, I could maybe this, make it a little bit more steeper, this more realistic actually for the front end like this. So this is the legroom we have here. And if I would have the 5-seater, then I would have like this amount of legroom. So it's a big difference indeed. But already here in the 7-seater setup, you can easily sit with tall Ls here, no problem as for that, and also even for the headroom. So it's really comfortable, a lot of space here in the rear in all of the different configuration. But what about the third row? But before we get to that and also to the trunk or the boot, let me show you here a nice sneak preview, because you can fold down this front seat here all the way flat. And this, of course, is really good for loading things through later on from the trunk. So what about the third seating row now? First of all, I pull this lever here on the top part, then I can slide it forward. And I've set this bench here to a position that I could still sit in the front row. I've set it a little bit forward that it actually works. So let's see about that. So as I said, the rails are not as long as in the 5-seater. Take off my shoes for that. I don't make anything dirty here. And let's see if I can still sit here as a tall adult. And yeah, I see here it's a problem with the legroom head. Yeah, that doesn't really work. I could maybe put this a little bit steeper like this. That would somewhat work. I can squeeze in here. But here, yeah, hardly any headroom left. But that would actually rather work. But you see here the length is the problem, so it's nothing for adults. Just to check that out. There's no isofix here on the third seating row though, so it is really only the use case if the kids are not as small that they still need the proper child seat, but they're not that tall yet that they don't fit here anymore. So like kids in between, so to speak. This is the only use case for here, I would say. Some do need that actually. For others, the 5-seater would be the more intelligent solution. Now to the trunk or the boot, which is at 850 liters, unless you have the 5-seaters. And then you are at 885 liters, so a little bit more. But this one here, the 7-seater, I'll show you the difference as well. Press here, and you can also soon store it. First of all, I got a new vintage ruler. Look at that. When we have the meter and inch scale on the same side. So here about a meter of 40 in. Yeah, that's the stuff, you know, I feed from in my life. You know, that's the stuff that's really getting me going. Yeah. So here, a meter of 40 inches.
Me, of course.
And Leah as well, of course. Yeah, Leah is like top priority.
And then it's the ruler.
And then priority 2 is ruler, wearing the same color as the vehicle color and stuff like that. Yeah. So a meter of 40 inches in width, approximately like that. The trolley also fits vertically underneath the cover. And then here, these are the seats that are stored at the moment. And here the normal length is, yeah, about 45 inches. And you have to learn the new scale, like 1 meters 15, approximately like that. And then the height here, there we go. So this is about 72 centimeters or 28 inches. Underneath here, we have some space, and we can put this one here up. Replacement tire underneath as well. And this becomes very interesting here also because we can then easily store this one here underneath. There we go. And then you have it secure and also a clean solution. There we go. So at the moment you can see we need a little bit more angle to be able to fold the other seats up. And you can do it, for example, like this, but in this case then everything folds forward. But that's the thing you can do from here, or you can directly release it from here. So I'm going to show that to you as well. But here, that's the way I can also fold up the third seating row like this. And to fold down again, it's like this. I always wonder what happens when I pull this, you know. Yeah, actually nothing. So to be able to move into the remote folding position, I have to put them back in position again. And there we go. Now I pull these once and twice, and then I can also push them a little bit further down. And of course now comes blop, blop, and now comes the real magic. There we go. And I mean, rarely have we seen this in vehicles, and I'm not even sure of the like if the ruler is actually fitting for that. It's like, what the hell? So can't believe that. So here you go onto the glove box. So this is like 2 meters now. So there's 2 meters plus. Wow, that's almost 2 meters 90, or 35 inches plus 79 inches. Who can calculate that very quickly? 79 inches plus 35 inches, 114 inches in total length. Wow. Interesting detail, by the way, here when folding the third seating row. Look at that here, like the transition between the seats here and the trunk. So when you fold down, that's like a covered area here. Nothing can fall in there. When you go back again, it folds up and hides like this. So it's a pretty cool system, right? Yeah, that was the first acceleration, like 10 to 90 kilometers an hour. Not the quickest one, definitely. But here it's more about, it's more affordable and it's more suitable for most situations. Let's start driving the all-new VW Tayron. And as I said earlier, very relevant, especially for all our European viewers and also in Australia. And even to the Northern American viewers, it tells you a little bit more like how the US Tiguan will ride, because they also share some similarities. And we start in normal comfort mode. So the steering is really light, suspension is also set to comfort. Here we have the optional DCC, dynamic chassis control, that's the adaptive suspension. And they not only have the 2-valve system now, but especially here this Tayron, as I told you earlier, has been equipped with a new piece that only the Tayron so far has. Later the Passat and the Tiguan will also receive it. That should make the ride even more comfortable, especially less vibrations, for example, during the motorway. So we're going to test that very soon and see about the comfort as for this aspect. And we can also tell you something about the noise installation, because so far, when we're on the motorway, it's indeed really, really silent. So remember that we don't have the highest equipment here. However, we do have the design pack, which includes the optional dampening. Let's do a quick intermediate acceleration here, sport mode 70 to 90. Let's go. Oh, there we go. And that is here the 1.5 TSI. So as I said earlier, we picked deliberately not the highest engine because we want to give you a more realistic car here, more realistic configuration that also more people can actually go for. So this one here, 9.4 seconds in the acceleration figure, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour. So entry level, not too strong. Due to the turbo, you still always have something going, let's take it that way. And this, at least when you don't push it too much, is also actually quite fuel efficient. More to that one here later. For many customers it will be enough, as long as you don't maybe like put towing or always drive fully loaded and something like that. When I'm in the sport mode here, by the way, suspension is stiffer. You definitely feel it here. For example, when the road is a little bit bumpier, so it's more like when you do some mountain roads or something that you have a little bit more fun. I would maybe also on the motorway go back to the comfort mode. This lower knob where I can switch through the driving modes, by the way, what's a little bit irritating, it's always going back to volume, and then always have to press it again to go to this selection here. I mean, it's good that I have it, and you might think about, like, from a normal everyday customer perspective, what function is used more. So the thought behind it is, okay, you once switch the driving mode, then it automatically goes back to the volume selection, because most of the time you rather more often change the volume. That's the thought behind it. Here for our testing purposes, of course, a little bit annoying, but yeah, at least I have it there. I can press it and then I can change the modes. And there is now a wider span even between comfort and sportiness with this DCC Pro, as I call it. Here in the comfort mode, evens the stuff out better and so on. And this is something that VW promises here, that you will be relaxed also after long journeys if you have this adaptive suspension. So yeah, we can also tell you more about that later maybe. But so far our first impression is actually really good. This adaptive suspension does work in sportiness, but it also works in comfort. And this additional insulation package in the design package for like 690 euros in a German configurator is really paying off. So it's getting -4 decibels for the interior noise, and I think it's really, really silent in here. So also when the cars are passing here on the motorway, I don't really feel that we are on the motorway, you know what I mean? Because it's very silent. And I would even say that at least at these speeds, this NVH, noise, vibration, harshness, is at a premium level. So very happy with that. I also like the bright ceiling here, by the way. I love that also while driving, that we're not like in this black or dark cave. Like a lot of car interiors are like all black these days, of course. So very happy to see the bright one as well. As for the steering feeling, in the comfort mode, it's really soft. However, it doesn't have a dead zone area or something like that. And when we go back to the sport mode, it also gives you more resistance. But I also configured myself in individual mode before we drove off. And that, for example, sets, you maybe know it when you're a subscriber and frequent viewer, suspension all the way soft, but then the steering more feedback. That's a setting I really appreciate, for example, because I like good suspension comfort, but I like a little bit more feedback from the steering, for example. Then we can go to 110 kilometers an hour. Let's see if the noise level is changed in any way. We can also set the cruise control here, by the way, and pick different modes, like for example the travel assist, which is the most sophisticated mode, where you also have the active lane keeping and so on. Then here you can press real buttons at the steering wheel to change the speed. Also really appreciate that. And now let's see how the speed is being monitored here, and also how we are being kept in the lane. Slightly left bend here. very sophisticated. Also blind spot monitor in the side mirrors we can see here. And when I would hit the turning indicators, then we also see it flashing. Very interesting. So it's a very good solution, definitely. Back here to our lane keeping. So we don't see hectic movements that it would be correcting. It's all very smooth. You know, again, the right bend. I'm not steering myself at the moment, just keeping my hands on the steering wheel, how it's supposed to be. So overall, very happy with the assistance systems here. Very elaborated. And the suspension, once again, also, it's not the best motorway here. Sometimes we have some smaller lines or holes in it. But it's really doing a good job. So if you ask yourself, is the DCC worth the option? I think yes. And then there were sometimes these questions that some brought up. Are there any disturbing noises or something? Any disturbing noise from this DCC Pro system now, especially from the rear axle? I haven't heard any, and we also had some bumpier parts here. So yeah, I can just say everything really silent. What does the noise insulation expert say? Thumbs ups from Leah. Yeah, because she's also very sensitive to that when cars are actually too loud. Especially when she's standing behind a petrol sports car and I'm hitting the throttle for exhaust test. Yeah, she had to endure a lot for that. I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, but that's also part of filming cars, right? Yes. Yeah, but yeah, cars used to be louder on the exterior anyway. Nowadays, in comparison, they all have become very silent from the exhaust, of course. So I think the main aspect here is that it can be a very good, smooth, long journey motorway vehicle. Very smooth ride, good suspension, good noise comfort, so really feeling at home here on the motorway. And maybe when we're back in Germany again, then we can also test it high speed or something like that. But here, at these 110 kilometers an hour, a very relaxing ride. And is there any difference to the Tiguan actually? I mean, this one here is larger, yes. Also has a longer wheelbase. I think that makes it more settled, more stable on the motorway. So I would take that one as a positive, at least for the motorway. Maybe not for the agility itself. And in comparison to the Kodiaq, which we've recently driven, I feel that there is a difference. There is a gap. Maybe the Kodiaq has some more practical solutions here and there, and some more interesting, like these clever ideas. But I feel that you get more sophistication and sound deadening here in the Tayron. That's at least what I feel. What do you think?
Yeah,
You agree?
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting app, because you always ask me like Tayron or Kodiaq, Passat versus Superb. Yeah, I mean, Kodiaq and the Superb, they have the advantage that you have the real climate knobs here. That's what I prefer in the Skoda solution, like from the user interface.
But at least there are buttons back yet.
Yeah, but at least we have buttons here. That's cool, definitely. But I feel that here the Tayron especially brings some kind, a little bit more of sophistication. Also, when you more steer yourself and don't want all the assistance systems, it's a really good feeling. Maybe here's also a good point, for example, to go for the assistance system, to deactivate the lane keeping assist, that it doesn't interfere at all. And you see it's relatively quickly done also while driving, that you can swipe it down and also, or like just press here the assist mode on the top part, and then that's actually it. So then we can see here, I'm still in this personal setting for more resistance at the steering wheel and for soft suspension. That's also fine here. However, when you want to have a little bit more fun, of course, you can once again also go back to the sport mode. And I think for these winding corners, that's also a little bit better, because it might even be better for the passenger to have a little stiffer setting than here for the suspension. Also, when you go maybe like here, some little bit left and right, car doesn't really shake up, stays really calm. So everything that is on this engineering tech side is very, very solid. And I mentioned it also earlier, this one here is built in Wolfsburg, Germany, so the base headquarter of VW. Interesting that also the Kodiaq and the Tiguan, Kodiaq Tiguan and the Tayron, they are like split. So with Passat and Superb, the Passat is being built at Skoda, basically. Here, the Tayron is built in Wolfsburg, Germany, and the Kodiaq is not. So interesting that they have this split there. For whatever reason, that makes sense. But actually, this car is also fun, especially when you put it to the sport mode. Of course, it won't become a sports car like this one that is facing us right now there.
Nice color.
Yeah, it's a nice color, definitely. But definitely you can have a lot of fun with this one here too. And I don't feel it too annoying that it has a longer wheelbase. Yes, a Tiguan will be more agile when you really put it to an like mountain pass or something like that.
Also nice as a passenger.
Oh, that's good to know from Leah, because yeah, there are some cars where she gets sick then, especially when it's a little bit more corners, but here obviously
It's fine, yeah.
all fine. And about the fuel economy, you can drive this one here with 6 liters on 100 kilometers, so like 39 mpg US, 47 mpg UK, and that's of course very reasonable considering the size of the vehicle. So the entry-level engine is not that powerful, but it's actually quite efficient. Of course, higher in the consumption than when you are going even quicker on the Autobahn. Pricing, we already have the German prices, starts like 45,000 euros, and you can spec like a Tayron. Yeah, I totally fall for that trap. It's a Tayron here. Yes, they are very similar. I mean, it's a Tiguan Allspace, so much, just with a new name. So the Tayron here, between 45,000 euros, and if you put a Tayron R-Line, highest engine, highest spec, all the extras, blah, 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 you can hit some 70,000 euros. Very expensive, of course. However, I did some test configuration with this vehicle. So here, base trim, base engine, and then adding some of the extras. And then you can reach some 52,000 euros, 53,000 euros, and have a well-spec'd vehicle, which you can be fine with. And you have a lot of space, either as the 5 or as a 7-seater. And I think that's a good proposition. And especially I was very positive about the driving experience, which was very sophisticated, especially if you go for this additional here, the 630, 690 euro extra for the extra soundproof windows. Now tell me what you think. And we recently got the Kodiaq in the RS trim actually for you, or if you want to check out the smaller Tiguan.